All right, so welcome to our first night of the social justice series. Tonight we're starting with immigration. We have Patricia, Joe, and Quetzalli joining us tonight. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce, and then we will go ahead and get started with questions. So we have Patricia Grace, if you could just wave as I introduce you, who served with MVC in 2017 or 2007 and 2008 at the Women's Intercultural Center in Anthony, Texas, or New Mexico, sorry, at the US and Mexico border. She is a social worker and lawyer and has served as a pro bono attorney at Catholic Charities in San Diego. And has been doing that for 10 years now. She is also a member of the Third Order of St. Francis. Then we have Joe Farmer, who served with MVC in 2017-2018 at Catholic Migration Services in New York City. After serving, he went on to study international affairs at Texas A&M, and he is now a consultant at Guidehouse, where he investigates Paycheck Protection Program loans for potential fraud. And then we have Quetzalli Rocha, who served also at Catholic Migration Services in 2012-2015. She's currently pursuing her master's degree of social welfare at the University of California and takes particular interest in the intersection of gender-based violence and immigrant rights. So thank you all so much for being here tonight, participating in this panel and sharing your stories and your wisdom with all of us. So we appreciate you taking that time. So to get us started, can you each tell us how you came to Mercy Volunteer Corps, what sparked your interest, and why you decided to be a Mercy volunteer? Patricia, if you want to start us off.
Sure, be glad to. I wanted to do a year of service. I wanted it to be in a Catholic organization, so I looked only for Catholic organizations. I was particularly interested in immigration. I had been a volunteer with Catholic Charities in my hometown in Pennsylvania with a refugee family and was very close to them. My family has lots of refugee history, and so immigration was a great interest. It wasn't what I did professionally. I was a prosecutor, and that's what I was doing professionally at the time. But this is what I wanted to do, and I love New Mexico. I had never been to Anthony, New Mexico, which if anyone ever travels there, it's only 2 streets and lots of dogs, but welcome to Anthony, New Mexico, a great place. Thank you.
Joe?
Yeah, thanks for having me again. I just want to say, but I chose MVC at the end of my senior year of college. I always knew I wanted to do some sort of year of service program because I had done a lot of service projects in the past. And I just really wanted to get back to that. So I looked around at a lot of things like Peace Corps and AmeriCorps, but those just didn't quite do it for me. There was no sense of community. They kind of just let you off to do your own thing. But I remember walking up to a booth at this community service fair we had in my senior year at Villanova. I met some of the staff there, and they talked to me about how I would live in a community with several other volunteers throughout my time. And that's what really appealed to me about MVC, because I would be able to share the experience with other people, and we could all really help each other get through it. Because I know for me, myself, and for others, it can be a tough process at times, and you really learn that way.
Should I go ahead and get started?
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you so much for having me as well. My name is Quetzalli Rocha. I was really drawn to Mercy Volunteer Corps because my sister, Xochitl Rocha, when she graduated from college, she served in Detroit at a free health clinic. And I got to visit her in Detroit, and I really got to see what it was like for her to live in community and to do a year of service. So that really inspired me. So when I graduated from college, I was particularly drawn to for the opportunity to live in New York City and work with the immigrant population within a legal setting as well. To have the opportunity to work under attorney and have that supervision and support. So I was particularly interested in working with this particular population. My family is from Mexico, so I'm very drawn to working with immigrants.
Thank you. And now if you could each tell us about what your service site was like, what your service site did, and then what your role was like at your service site. And Joe, if you could get us started.
Absolutely. So I worked in New York at Catholic Migration Services. I worked primarily in the Queens office. It was a very diverse population I got to work with. There were a lot of Filipinos close by, a lot of Colombians, a lot of Ecuadorians. And in that experience, I was able to meet with all those people. I would help them obtain citizenship because I was on the naturalization team. So I would meet with, let's say, maybe 3 people a day, fill out the application with them, make sure they were eligible, and then go through the process beginning to end. And that's a rather arduous process too, because it can take around a year or so with the backlog there is to become a citizen. What more about my role there in the site? It was interesting too, because we got to work alongside the workers' rights and housing rights people. So beyond immigration law, we also saw what immigrants, like their life in New York in terms of where they're mistreated with housing rights or employers weren't paying them. So I was able to get a very broad sense of what being an immigrant is like in New York City.
Thanks, Joe. Quetzalli?
Yeah, so I was at the same site as Joe, Catholic Migration Services. They had a Queens and Brooklyn office, but I was based out of the Queens office in their Immigrant Workers' Rights Program. So what I would do, they had a labor line or linea laboral, and they would, it was for immigrant workers who most often were not paid minimum wage or were not paid overtime. So they had wage and discrimination violations. And through this labor line, I was able to help workers report violations to different government agencies. For example, the New York State Department of Labor or the US Department of Labor or the Equal Employment and Opportunity Commission. And sometimes Catholic Migration Services would take on cases for representation in court as well, in addition to assisting with filing complaints with different government agencies. And as Joe had mentioned, there was various programs. There was also the tenants' rights program, and we would often work together to do Know Your Rights trainings in different parishes across Brooklyn and Queens.
Thank you. And Patricia?
So at the Women's Intercultural Center in Anthony, New Mexico, we lived and worked at the center. Our apartment was right there at the center in this small town right on the border. My assignment, I had 2 assignments. One was with the Border Awareness Program, which is a border awareness experience where college students, mostly college students, we occasionally got other groups, but mostly college students came to the border and then had days with us. So they would spend basically 3 days in the US and then 3 days, and we had sister centers in Ciudad Juarez, and they would spend 3 days on that side of the border. And in addition, they participated in different lectures on immigration law, on what life is like at the border, and we visited different places of interest. And so I was working with that program. In addition, did some teaching. In citizenship, Joe. So it's interesting you said that. In citizenship, as we know, if you have been in the U.S. for a given period of time and are of a certain age, you can take the interview and answer the questions in your native language. And so we devised a curriculum in Spanish for for many of our folks. And actually, one of the people who was one of the women who was my student is teaching it now and continues to teach it. So we're very gratified about that. And in addition, we hung out. We were part of the Folklorico group and danced in the streets, and we did plays, and we had lunches, and we just had fun with our community. Thank you.
That sounds wonderful. Can you all talk about how your experience with MVC contributed to your, like where you are now, both professionally and your understanding of immigration and your passion for immigration? Quetzalli, if you want to start us off.
Sure. So after MVC, I went on to work at a domestic violence nonprofit in their legal program. And because of that experience that I had at MVC, with doing legal advocacy work, I was then able to get this position at a domestic violence nonprofit. So I was helping survivors obtain restraining orders and navigate the family and criminal court. And the majority of the survivors that I was working with were either undocumented monolingual Spanish speakers or in process of obtaining permanent residency. So I was able to, because of the immigration component, Catholic Migration Services, I had an understanding of the different types of relief that are available for immigrants. And particularly with survivors of violence, there's the Violence Against Women Act and the U visa process. So I was able to kind of do advocacy on that end as well. So it really has been a foundation. My work that I did at MVC has been a foundation to kind of growing professionally in the immigrant rights field, but also just in my passion for working, particularly with Latinx immigrants.
Thank you. Patricia?
As you mentioned in the introduction, after MVC, I volunteered at Catholic Charities here in San Diego. I moved to San Diego soon thereafterwards and served as a pro bono attorney for 10 years, working on a whole variety of cases. And so that, and we are on a border. We're not quite the same way we were in New Mexico, where when we went to the supermarket, we could throw a stone to the border. We're not quite that close, but we're 30 minutes or so from the border, and go over for a whole variety of reasons. Go to the border. I have a passion for this work and for people migrating. I mean, we're looking at, we don't even know the numbers of people roaming the planet right now looking for safety. It's pretty absurd, right? It's awful. It's a tragedy. One other thing I want to say about effects on your life, though, I made a lifelong friend, and we still talk often. In fact, we're talking this morning. She was telling me about weather in Maine, and that's a very powerful connection you have, living with someone, sharing work, and sharing faith for that year. Thank you.
Patricia, is that a community member that you were talking about that you?
Yes, we lived, we were both Patricia. So I used my middle name, Elizabeth, for the year. So I'm known in New Mexico as Elizabeth. And so, yeah, but two Patricias. We've been close friends ever since.
That's great. Joe?
At the beginning of my time, I really thought I wanted to be a lawyer after MVC and go on to law school, but doing the immigration law made me realize I kind of hated the legal side. Sorry, Patricia, on that one. but I really did love speaking with so many people from around the world. And that made me realize I wanted something, whether it be travel or global studies, to inform my career. So after that, I did go on to get my master's in international affairs from Texas A&M. My ultimate goal, I'm not quite there now, but I hope to work for the State Department and do something like craft better immigration policy for the United States, work as a diplomat to improve relations between the United States and other countries. And I think MVC really springboarded me into that.
Very cool. I love all of the different perspectives that each of you have kind of gone to with immigration and international relations, which is really neat. Can you each talk about some of the injustices and social justice issues that your clients or the immigrants that you have encountered face in their daily lives? Patricia, if you'll start.
Sure. We're all very familiar with the fact that this administration has not been friendly to immigrants and to refugees. In San Diego, we used to settle hundreds of families a year from all over the world. We don't settle anybody anymore, essentially. And that's a problem. And as we all know, there's roadblock after roadblock put up for people seeking immigration benefits that are available to them through through the law. So it's been a big struggle. They're really struggling with those. Delays are enormous. I mean, COVID has of course added to it, but even before COVID, the delays were absurd. And the advocates could hardly, our clients would always say, how long? I would say, I'm going to guess, because I can't tell you how long anything would be. I'm getting a lot of nods, so we all know, which doesn't make your clients have much confidence in you, but there was nothing we can tell them. We don't know what is happening there. And then of course we're dealing with enormous prejudices in our society. And we tend to forget that we have one creator and we're one human family. And so those are the struggles. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Joe.
I'll certainly echo Patricia and add that it's so difficult because there are such a diverse array of injustices that these people face. It's really hard to zero in on a particular one. The most common one for sure that I saw was poverty. Almost everybody, I'd say 80% of my clients were able to get some sort of full fee waiver, which meant they were right at or below the poverty line. So that was tough. But in addition to that, other ones that I commonly saw were some sort of political maltreatment in their country of origin that garnered them political asylum here in the United States. And then, as Quetzalli was mentioning earlier, a lot of people get U visas from some sort of domestic abuse. So it's unfortunate that so many different things we have to fix that aren't necessarily in the United States either. So, I mean, we can improve our own policy to try and curb some of the injustices here, but it'll take a lot more work doing so around the world.
Thank you for that perspective, Joe. Quetzalli?
Yeah, I really want to echo both with what Joe and Patricia mentioned. I can really point to a few certain aspects to kind of delve into specific issues. For example, with Patricia mentioned with the U visa cases, I think it was like around a 7-year backlog that people have to wait to find out. And as around the time that I was working with survivors of domestic violence, the Trump administration had issued a new order saying that domestic violence would no longer count for asylum cases and kind of watching that impact and also that fear within the community. There was a lot of fear in terms of even reporting violence to the police, in terms of fearing deportation, and just the general fear within the communities with the new administration and any sort of new orders that were made. In New York, often what I would hear workers state was that their employers would threaten deportation if they would complain about the conditions or the wages that they were paid. So that was also real fear, you know, in terms of reporting violations. And in the immigration front too, if particular survivors of violence wanted to fix their status and their case was denied, then they're already kind of in the system versus staying underground and staying undocumented. And that, you know, that was an issue of am I better off kind of undocumented and living in the shadows, or am I better off trying to obtain legal status, and then there's the possibility of my case being denied, and then I would ultimately be deported. And I'm thinking particularly in terms of COVID. Right now, there's really no work for immigrants. There's no stimulus checks for people who are undocumented or who aren't here legally, or have legal residency. There's not the ability to apply for unemployment. So people the immigrant community is feeling the effects of COVID very hard right now.
Thank you. So with all of that being said, what can all of us who don't work in immigration or aren't on the front lines, what can we all do to be advocates for justice and to support immigrants or refugees? Joe, if you want to start us off.
I would say if you have the time or means to do so, or even if you can make just a little time, please write your elected official, donate your time if you are able to speak another language. I know all these immigration workshops we did, we always needed Spanish speakers, Arabic speakers, all these different. If you know another language, that would be great. If you have extra money, of course. I know my organization, CMS, always was looking for new grants and donations. But more simply than that, I would say just try to be aware of how you interact with immigrants each day. Whether they have limited English skills, maybe, try to watch yourself and be patient with that. If you feel that you are stereotyping someone else who's different from you, try and notice that and think of ways you can not do that in the future, overcome those things.
Thanks, Joe. Quetzalli?
Yeah, I echo what Joe stated. If you have the capacity to donate either time or money to organizations that are working with immigrants, and there's also plenty of organizations who can keep you up to date if you want to join their newsletters that they're sending out, that they're really able to decipher information that both they're doing, but nationally and statewide, that impact immigrants. And just staying aware on these issues, trying to keep up to date in what's happening, because the more we're educated around what's happening, the more we can resist. Yeah, I think just kind of really following these organizations that are on the ground and are doing this work.
Thanks. Patricia?
Yeah, I would add my voice to Joe and Quetzalli as well. I mean, yeah, I mean, money is always needed, time, prayers for people. And I'm feeling a real call to to really talk about it within our communities. There's so much misunderstanding. And of course, one of my friends says, if you keep this up, nobody's going to invite you for dinner. And I think she's right in that, you know, I mean, but I get, you know, when I hear one more time about all those illegal people at the border, they're not illegal. That's how they are supposed to present themselves. That's what the law says. And, you know, and it's this kind of misunderstandings and this prejudice that gets fed in that way. So in as much as I think we can keep a calm voice and just talk about our own experiences, our own encounters, and encourage others to have the encounter. Because I think once one has an encounter, and I think Quetzalli and Joe would agree with me, once you have an encounter, you can't hold your prejudice in quite the same way you did before. And so, yeah, that's all I would add at this point. Thank you.
Also, we have an election coming up. So vote for both local and larger leaders. So this time I'll open it up to all of you who are viewing to ask our panel any questions that you might have, whether that's about their experience or their perspectives. Feel free to ask away.
I just want to say to you three, thanks for sharing your story. I know, Patricia, I agree with what you said. Immigration is it's a huge issue, and I get so confused with it that it's hard to really follow what's going on. So I really echo that. The more people can talk about it, it just clear things up. If you're not directly involved in it, you really just hear the major stories or those kind of clickbait words like illegal or crossing or all those things that are, you know, painted in a negative light, and it's not all negative like that. So thank you for sharing your stories and helping me understand and develop more of a thoughtful and, you know, curious opinion on those things. So thank you.
I live in an area that is somewhat suburban, but is extremely diverse in its population. And there is a very large Latinx population here. It's interesting because I used to teach English as a second language and I speak Spanish. And I wanted to find people that I could help. That's a very difficult process. Because we really have no formal, it seems like everything is informal. It's all like through churches and different organizations that they don't want to reveal it. I'm not sure how to phrase this, but it seems like people are very cautious about people who want to help. Do you have any advice for someone like me who really does English as a second language? It was one of my most joyous things to do, or to work with people to help them learn English. I'm having trouble making connections. We don't have any formal organizations in the area. And sometimes I'll be approached. It's interesting. I'll be approached at a grocery store by someone who has a question. And for some reason, they know that they can approach me, but I don't want to make them uncomfortable either, you know, and nobody wants to reveal information. Does that make sense? In some, I think they're coming through the churches and some, I guess I could knock on the door, but every time I do go up to the church, the couple that I know of, they're very cautious and very afraid. And I understand it. I understand it completely, but if you have any advice.
I don't actually, Marian, in that in any community I've ever lived in, I've always hooked up with Catholic Charities, and they kind of managed to find a place for me to go, you know, and to do it. There is, and you know, I confirm what you said. There's a lot of, and Quetzalli said it too. The fear of being outed, so to speak, you know, and I think our DACA kids worried a lot about that because they, you know, they were very exposed in many ways. And so I would just say, you know, again, it is through the informal networks, and they're not exactly informal because we are 1 billion Catholics in the world. So, you know, there are organizations that can assist in that way. The other thing is, I want to echo what Joe said. Money is really needed. For example, it was right before the Memorial Day weekend, and I remember because it was Memorial Day, and I wanted my client to be able to get out of detention before that. And at the point when the signature was signed that he could get out, a couple of phone calls, his bond was posted by one, a plane ticket was purchased by another organization, an overnight was purchased by a third organization. Well, it's exciting. Rick Quetzalli's shaking. Yes, it's exciting when you see people coming together like that, and money was provided, and he was with his brother within 24 hours. So it's that piece that money is needed. Money is needed in addition to skills and the encounters. So I encourage you to keep looking, Marion. It's great.
I will try to work. It's so interesting because so much of my time and energy has been dedicated out of my immediate geographic area, you know? And so I'm known in other areas, other circles because of my work, but not where I live. And so maybe I need to start in the city in Philadelphia and then work my way out, you know, and do as you say. It'll get there. It's only just recently, within the last year, that I've started to really look. And the money thing, yes. For what I have, I'm willing to give. So I'll make that connection too, even for CMS. We don't have anybody at Catholic Migration this year. They just didn't feel as though they could connect the volunteer experience because of the COVID situation. But we're hoping for next year that they'll take us back. So thank you.
I think I can add a little bit to Patricia's answer. I think one thing that I learned throughout my time was I had to gain trust with each and every client that came to me, because they were obviously giving me something very sensitive, and you know, it's best that I have everything and I know everything about their past to make sure we go through the process as safely as possible. So I think if you're a good actor looking to help these people, try to gain that trust with them if you're really looking to, make an effort.
Thanks.
Yeah, I want to echo what Joe was saying in terms of trust and building that connection. I mean, the fact that you speak Spanish, I think, opens so many doors. And one thing that comes to mind right now, it's a strange positive with COVID, but because we are all, working on this online platform, there might be other organizations that that might not be based locally where you are, but that could use a volunteer who speaks Spanish to work with clients in different capacities, because we always need more Spanish speakers.
Okay, thanks.
I just want to jump in to thank Marion, MVC, and Andrea and Mercy. But you're sending a cohort out this year. That's amazing. I mean, we're still figuring out how to get to the supermarket here, and you've got, it's wonderful. I'm totally delighted. It's great. It's so great that you're doing this.
Oh, thank you so much. I wasn't without a lot of angst, I'm not gonna lie. But we felt as though we didn't really have a choice. I said to Marie, we're doing the right thing, aren't we? Like, it's like, but I feel like those relationships are formed, and, there are people who want to serve, and hopefully they'll all be fine. We've got lots of protocols in place, but thanks for saying that, because it would have been a lot of organizations such as ours have stepped back for the year, and we just didn't feel like we wanted to do that. One of the things that we found with the Zoom platform too is, even through the orientation, is we were able to connect with so many alumni that normally we wouldn't be able to connect with. do these kinds of talks and presentations, which has really been completely gratifying, particularly for, like, I knew each of you in your year of service, and I'm just astounded at the accomplishments and who you've become and who you are. And that reminds me why I do what I do. So thank you for that. It's just so heartwarming to see that you're doing well and that you've grown from your experience with MVC. That means a lot. It does.
I just want to thank you again for the opportunity. I wouldn't be who I am today and where I am today without my year of service with MVC.
Wow. Our pleasure, believe me.
I know, I want to give all of you hugs.
I know. That's the thing I miss the most. And let's face it, it wasn't easy. I know for some, it's community wasn't easy. There were things that, weren't easy, but you stepped into it, and it's just, you should be really proud of yourselves. And yeah, it's exciting stuff. It is. And the more I hear, and the more amazed I am at everything that's being done. So it is like ripples in a pond, and if you feel like, for me, if you feel as though you're not getting anywhere or you're having trouble unraveling the craziness of it all, at least you know that there are other people of like mind, and this is the way to connect those people so that you can move forward in whatever little positive way that you can. So thank you, Gabby. Thanks for being here tonight.
Yep, I'm going to go ahead and read it out loud too. She says, "Thank you for sharing your stories. I do not have any questions, but I just wanted to say thanks. I'm considering doing a year of service after college graduation, so hearing your stories is exciting to me." And Gabby, I think all of us here would say, do it. Yeah, Mike just commented, do it.
Come on, Gabby. We're here
I'm
for
the window rock.
Yeah.
That's the spot.
Another place we weren't able to go to this year, which makes us very sad, but hopefully next year.
Yeah, hopefully. It's a good thing.
Yeah, I was going to ask the panel if you guys have any advice for people who are considering volunteering for a year.
Do it. Just do it. There's no doubt in my mind. I tell my own children that who didn't take my advice, but any other young people that I see, absolutely do it. It's the thing to do. It's great.
Yeah. And I'm so happy you keep in touch with Patricia. Please give her our love.
I told her we were meeting today, and but I will tell her. I didn't know you'd be with us, Marion. I will send your regards to her.
Please.
Yeah, she's great.
Good.
I agree. Just do it. My mother did Jesuit Volunteer Corps, and she really imprinted a year of service on all of us. And as you can see, my brother's now in Mercy in San Francisco. So I definitely do it. I mean, logistically, it'll kind of build your resume. So that's always a plus. It gives you enter, you have the structure of being in a community, the structure of working at an agency that MVC knows and trusts. So there's a real security in that. And also, I mean, it's just such an incredible experience that that would be impossible to get without Mercy Volunteer Corps.
Yeah, even after the experience, you have the opportunity to live in some fun, exciting place for a year. I mean, I'd say there are a lot of pros. I imagine they may not be doing Guyana this year, but they have San Francisco, New York, all these fun, exciting cities, Savannah, Georgia. So, you'll have fun, you'll meet great people. Definitely do it.
Yeah.
And we can't forget, it is service to the Lord. So how wonderful that we can serve him in this way.
Amen.
Amen.
Well, you all rock. Thank you so much for participating tonight, for being here, and sharing your stories and your wisdom with all of us. And thank you to everyone who was able to tune in. I'll be happy to send this recording to you if you'd like. Just let me know. We have a couple of events coming up as well. Next week on Tuesday, September 29th at 7:30 Eastern Time, we'll be going live on our YouTube for just a general info session for potential volunteers. And then we're doing a yoga and meditation spirituality night, which I'm really excited for, on October 13th at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. So if you're interested in that, you can sign up the same way you did for this by going to our website, mercyvolunteers.org/community, to get all the details for that. So thank you all again. Have a wonderful evening.
Thanks, everyone. Stay safe.